Hey, how you doing? Welcome to Midnight Riders Technology Studio. Still, of course, under construction. Just expect me to continue saying that every time for a while. Yeah, hey, how you doing tonight? Hey, before I get too far into it, I want to throw a quick shout out to May I Learn English, which is a Kickstarter on Indiegogo. Well, it's an Indiegogo campaign, Kickstarter, same thing, just a different platform. And really cool premise. They're trying to set up so they can get the funding to create a program that's designed for teaching non-English speaking children English, with a particular focus on kids that have special needs like autism, ADHD, things like that. Not that it's not useful for regular kids also, but it's got a lot of focus there. Now, you'll have to forgive me tonight if I cough a little bit. I've got something going on in my sinuses that's driving me nuts. A cough dropping in my mouth, and been trying to keep me up at night, coughing and wheezing. So yeah, joy. But anyways, if you're interested, please take a look on the YouTube page. There's a link to them right in the YouTube description, right in there. Click on it. Read up more about them. It's a cool idea. In fact, actually, I had asked her if I could get her on the show, on the blog, on the show, whatever, to get a live interview. The problem is she's actually over in China, and, well, YouTube doesn't really work particularly well, and Google Hangout and everything else does not work particularly well through the Great Firewall of China. So I apologize, I can't get them on here. That was really something I wanted to do because I thought it sounded like a great idea. Anyways, so on to tonight's topic. Science fiction, and, well, how really short-sighted it is. And there's going to be at least a couple of people who go, what? Short-sighted? What do you mean? Let me explain. Science fiction is a process of doing what if and extrapolating. Sometimes for some really, really wild ideas. But, well, let me throw into something real quick. For instance, the idea of being able to talk to somebody from anywhere. Anywhere at any given moment. Or at least as long as you had signal. And, well, science fiction gave us one of those things. In fact, quick example. Okay, you have to excuse me, this is rather crude. I'm still not on the setup that I want to do this with because of the audio problems I have, actually particularly the audio delay problems I have. And it's probably going to be another couple of weeks before I pick up the mixer board I want and do all the rest of the setup I'd like to do to get rid of that extra lag and use the higher quality production tools I'd like. But I've got to work around for the moment. It's just rather crude. So give me just a second here, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. In theory, this should work. Star Trek Communicator. Everybody knows what one of those looks like right now. Everybody. And there was actually predecessors to this before the Star Trek Communicator. But this is the biggie. This is the one that everybody probably first saw. The predecessor to the cell phone. It was anywhere you went. It was handheld. It was amazing. And at the time, it made for great science fiction because, well, nobody had such a thing. The closest you could get was walkie-talkie. Walkie-talkies had fairly short range. Well, nowadays, we have those in abundance. In fact, we even had ones that looked a little bit like that with the Motorola Star Trek flip phones. They're pretty awesome. I had one at one time because the job I did was required to have a cell phone. Pretty cool. But the thing about it is, really, that wasn't looking very far in the future. That was the late '60s. I'm putting it this way because it's actually on the other screen. Yeah, see, part of my production setup. Anyways, we're not talking about far back, really. And this is the thing that I have. Science fiction projects so many of these things as being hundreds and hundreds of years in the future, sometimes thousands. That these things are just so amazingly far out there we could never think of them. We couldn't come up with them. The problem is, in reality, science fiction doesn't think that far ahead. Oh, wow. I mentioned the person from China, from may I learn English happens to actually be watching right at the moment. Pretty cool. Hi, how you doing out there? Um, yeah, that's actually absolutely awesome. Anyways, but actually, if I will pull up Google Plus, I should. Just making sure that she knew I saw it and thought it was awesome. Anyways, so science fiction doesn't go very far in the future. The problem is because of an old saying that anything sufficiently advanced is indiscernible, uh, indistinguishable from magic. See, if I told you that we were going to, in say, 10 years, we'd have devices that we just slap up to our head, and we can think the ideas to each other. A lot of scientifically minded people might go, well, you're kind of full of it. It's not going to happen, especially not in that time frame. But the truth is, we're not that far off already. There's already been a couple of experiments with how much information can we actually pick up from the brain, and how much can we transmit back into the brain. There was a neat little experiment that was done that showed the idea, and I'm not going to call it practical, but it was there. The idea of getting a signal from one person and sending it to the other, sheerly through, you might call it technology-assisted telepathy. It was successful. Granted, it was the most crude concept and most crude way of doing it, which is that you ended up with just a flash of light. It wasn't a full thought. It wasn't anything else. But this is the beginning already. So if I say within 10 years we can do it, surprisingly, we might actually be able to. If not 10 years, within 20 years. We're already getting to that point. And see, this is the problem. Science fiction actually only thinks of a short distance away. Yeah, I'll mention this one too. For instance, the idea of having a computer that you walk around with all the time, or that you could do anything that you could do from a desktop. The Star Trek PAD, P-A-D-D, which been used in a couple of different series, quite successfully. Cool idea. The truth is, though, it's not that. The amount of time between it and now the iPads and Android pads and even predecessors to that. Oh, hang on. There's one more button I have to hit before you actually see it. See? Yeah. Pad. Yeah, it's going to take a little getting used to this setup. The truth is, though, it wasn't that long a distance between that idea and we were walking around with iPads and Android pads, and even some predecessors to that that are full-scale computing devices, network-enabled, so they're talking to the rest of the world. Yeah, it's amazing. They were portrayed. Well, the start rate on that is 408, 460. I'm trying to remember what time frame that would have been. Because I don't. Yes, I'm a geek. I'm a Star Trek geek. I'm a very big Star Trek geek, but I can't remember what that date would actually transfer into. Especially because star dates were somewhat random to a certain degree. They were really a production number, and just later on we gave them meaning. Star Trek Next Generation, for instance, further defined and refined it. But Star Trek, they were just a production number, which is part of the reason why they weren't necessarily in order. And then later on, they had to explain them not being in order, because as you spend time in impulse doing half the speed of light, you have problems with dealing with time dilation issues. Really, seriously, they had to come up with an explanation of it. Because Star Trek geeks require explanations. I'm not bagging on that either. I'm one of those people. So it really wasn't that far. In fact, actually, if you want to see one that was a lot further thinking into the future, if I can actually get my mouse to work here. And I always laugh at that because we're just now getting to it. Okay, let's try this button again. And do this. And do that. We'll present to everyone. Going to present it to everyone. Ah, there we go. Dick Tracy. This is 1950s. What has he got on his wrist? Well, it's either a prototype for a Samsung or a prototype for an Apple smartwatch. It's got a two-way wrist TV, which, by the way, the iPhone or the Apple Watch does not have a camera in it, as far as I know. It does have audio pickup, I believe. I don't know, but it definitely will display it. And so theoretically, you could have your iPhone in one hand and be displaying it on the other. But we're almost to that point already. Excuse me. I told you I was going to be coughing a little bit. We're almost to this point. So it's kind of cool that they were that, that wasn't even science fiction. They were just that far ahead in their thinking for a comic book strip. A lot of those technologies that we're talking about nowadays that were in the realm of science fiction is only usually 20, 30, 40 years old. We're not talking very long. Stuff that has been concepts that were put forth in science fiction in my lifetime that were projected as being hundreds of years in the future are already coming to fruition. Obviously, the Dick Tracy watch was not in my lifetime. The pad, on the other hand, was in my lifetime. The Star Trek communicator, slightly before my lifetime. Just slightly. That was 1968, 1969. I wasn't born until the end of Star Trek. Not that I'm saying I'm old, but I've been around a little while. And some of the concepts that are out there that we experience on a daily basis that we don't even think about. Started in science fiction just not so long ago. So science fiction, I'm not bagging on science fiction as being a bad predictor of the future. As a matter of fact, science fiction is a great predictor of the near future. 2 generations usually, 3 generations at best. And some people are going to say, yeah, but there's stuff like warp drive that, man, we're not going to see that in our lifetime. I wouldn't be so sure on that. For instance, the current science fiction drive setup. Let me show you a picture of I'm going to laughably call this prototype. This is not really a prototype. That would imply something that doesn't exist. This is a concept idea that they've had for what the first of the warp-enabled spaceships built here on Earth would look like. Now you'll notice there is one some resemblance to the Star Trek Enterprise in some weird ways. There we go. There's some see, and I'm going to want to say this word here in a minute, and I'm not going to be able to say it properly. But it looks a little bit like the Enterprise. It's even called the Enterprise. Keep in mind the first space shuttle was also called the Enterprise. Not the one that flew into space, but the one that was used for the landing, to test out the concepts of launching and landing and being able to handle this dead stick device trying to land on a regular field. So they're already looking at the idea. Well, what would it look like? Dang it! I didn't hit that share with everybody. This is the prototype I was talking about. There we go. Sorry. Gonna have to remember to hit that. But we're already Alcubierre, and I'm saying it horribly, and I apologize. Somebody else who's a better science geek than I is going to go, really? That's how you pronounced it? Alcubierre drives are an interesting concept. Originally, these were something that were going to require the energy output of an entire star-type setup, and required the amount of strange matter. Now, keep in mind, exotic matter, about the size of Jupiter. This is impossible for us, and slowly but surely, the concept was twiddled down. Till now, it's actually not too bad. I think it was something like 70 pounds of this stuff is all that's necessary, according to some of the current thought. That's not saying that it's going to happen tomorrow, because we still lack the idea of what this exotic matter is going to need to be, and how to get it, how to make it, all these things. and it doesn't overcome the problems that there might exist. For instance, the front leading edge of this machine would actually collect a whole lot of radiation, tons of it, to the point when you got to the other end at, we're going to say 3 times the speed of light, for instance, when you came out of it, all the energy that collected up on that front edge is going to release. So whatever planet you came to visit is suddenly going to get a burst of 3 light years worth of radiation dumped on them in a split second. Not exactly useful, not part of what we would like to do. But the point being, the ideas are here, and they're being built. There's when I say built, I mean the concepts are being built. The science behind it is happening. What happens next? Where do we handle each one of these things? What do we do to come up with the exotic matter that's necessary for it? These concepts are slowly being worked with. Could it happen in 500 years? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, there are some people who say that we'll never do faster than light travel, and they're right. We'll never do faster than light travel in the frame of the universe within these parameters. On the other hand, when you start changing the frame of the universe, which you're basically doing here, you're doing something called wrinkling space. You're unobserved by the universe, and suddenly you can do faster than the speed of light. It's possible. Will we do it in 500 years? Absolutely. Will we do it in 100 years? Probably yes. Will we do it in 50 years? Maybe. Will we do it in my lifetime? I'm going to make the bet that yes, we probably will. Some of these projects are amazingly complex, don't get me wrong. What's really amazing, though, is, like I said, all the stuff that's supposed to be hundreds of years in the future, it's not really been that far. Science fiction, in fact, this is the problem. We can't think far enough ahead for science fiction to be really set in hundreds and thousands of years time frames, because we can't predict how fast we're going to continue to create. Right now, we're not just creating on this really fast scale. We're creating on an exponential scale. The world is advancing faster than we've ever advanced in the entirety of human history. Our understanding of the universe, our understanding of everything but ourselves continues to evolve so quickly, so amazingly fast, that each thing builds on itself. And our wins that we've had in the past, for instance, computers. Computers are one of the great devices that have really helped drive the furthering of science and the evolution of technology to such a rate that nobody could have really predicted. They could have predicted the idea that we would have computers that would do these things off in the distant future. Now, oddly enough, somebody's going to point out, well, what about the flying car? Well, we've actually had it a couple of times. We forget we've had the flying car a couple of times. The problem with the flying car isn't the technology or the science behind it. That's not that hard. It's the humans. See, most of us aren't pilots. Yeah, that's the problem. See, we don't think in three-dimensional spaces. We don't really do that well with two-dimensional spaces when we're driving down the road. In fact, actually, we're horrible at it. Really. We like to run into things all the time. This is just what happens. I'm looking at how many accidents per day. Now, then, the thing about a car is that when the car fails, it goes to a stop, or at worst, it might slam into something. Flying car, on the other hand, when it fails, it has to go down. And to really do that effectively, you kind of need a technology to prevent them from flying at terminal velocity, because the occupants don't do too well with it, and whatever they land on doesn't do too well with it. Back to the Future Part 2 had a part about somebody being in traction because he'd gotten hit by a flying car while playing golf. It fell out of the sky, boom, hits him. So some of the problems we have aren't that they are technology problems. Like I said, we've already had the flying car. We've had it a couple of times, a couple of different manufacturers. It's never, make a joke, it's never really taken off. And The expense of them is fairly high. We're talking $300,000 for something that we still don't have the infrastructure for. Okay, and some smart aleck is probably going to say, yeah, but we don't have the hoverboard yet. Well, I'll tell you what, it's not 2015 just yet, so hang on there. Yes, we don't have the hoverboard yet, because the hoverboard wasn't a science fiction device. And you're going to go, what? No, it was a plot device from a throwaway concept in a science fiction movie that was only loosely based on science fiction. More on the lines of H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, rather than Star Wars and Star Trek. It's a novelty concept. In fact, I'm sure that the novelty concept came from how they ended Part 1. Part 1, when they end, the car flies off. Doc Brown says, where we're going, we don't need roads. And flips his glasses down and off they fly. See, I really wish I could just grab a scene from that and show it. Anyways, it was a throwaway. It was a throwaway joke. And then they turned it into a real thing for the next one. And then they turned it into actually a pivotal plot device eventually for the third movie. Because in the second movie, the whole thing could have been done, this is complete aside, the whole thing could have still been done on skateboards. Same scene pretty much could have been done on skateboards minus the water. So, yeah. Science fiction does do one thing. Even though I'm bagging on it about being very, very short-term thinking, science fiction is fantastic at blue skying. The concept of blue skying is that you're thinking of things outside the limits and outside the boundaries of the stuff in front of you. What could happen if I had a device that created energy at nearly infinite capacity? Well, what would I do with it? Well, here's what's possible. Iron Man, for instance. Iron Man, another great science fiction concept from comic books, just like Dick Tracy. Iron Man's actually fairly old. I don't remember the date. I think it's 1960-something. Let's see what the first appearance was. 1963. I know it was 1960-something. Did not start out with repulsor rays and all of this. That's stuff that's built up over time. But the concept, in fact, actually, one time he had roller skates. Not kidding. Not everybody will be familiar with that, but that's part of what happened at one point in the concepts. Oh, I've got more people watching. Hi there. How you doing? They got a little indicator down here that says how many people are watching. Usually with the live blogs, I'll be honest, usually with the live blogs, I don't worry too much about how many people are watching. It's not really relevant. I'm just throwing the stuff, my thoughts out, and if somebody happens to be watching, that's kind of cool, I guess. Usually it's actually just because it gets archived and ends up on my website. Anyways, sorry. So my point was, Iron Man, for instance. If you look at the concept of Waldo suits and exoskeletons and these sort of things, Iron Man-style technologies, we're getting there right now. We're getting there. We're getting very close. In fact, let's throw another image up here. Yeah, I really need to improve on this setup. And if the button says present to everyone, otherwise it doesn't work. All right, there we go. This is an example of a robotic suit that's being worked on. Does not look anything like Iron Man. And one of its greatest, actually, one of the greatest failings is it is missing that one thing I mentioned. It is missing the concept of having a ridiculously powerful power source. We haven't really got there yet. Now, I would say, but, you know, that can't be too far off. Energy density is one of the hardest things that we've had to conquer when it comes to things like this. I'm not saying it's impossible, though. Let me show you this. All right, where is it? Yeah, this thing. Okay, this thing's just flat out sexy. Um, there we go. Now let's see if we can share it. This is a beautiful beast of a machine. Um, this thing is ridiculously fast. 217.5 miles an hour. Um, it's a four-seater. It's not really actually that small. Um, the thing about it is what the engine is. It's powered with a saltwater engine. Um, and you're wondering how that works. Well, that's for other people to figure out. Seriously, there's actually quite a few articles on this car, and if you're really interested in the car, it's actually called a Quant, Quant, and that is their e-sport limousine. They use a saltwater flow cell system to power 4 electric motors, and it has a 200-liter tank, has an average range of 373 miles. So in other words, it's got really good energy density. Lithium power cells are now increasing in their density considerably. We had this level where technology for batteries was not improving. It was just very slow. Now we're starting to see it go up. Partially because of these. I mean, not the iPhone in particular, but partially because of all these mobile devices we have. I got a Basis watch, for instance. I have to charge it now every 2 or 3 days. With better energy density, I wouldn't have to charge it for, say, a couple of weeks. Manufacturers want this better energy density. Apple wants it for their iPhone. Apple wants it for their Apple Watch. Samsung wants it for their smartphones and their tablets. All of these things. So we'll watch. As time goes on, it's going to improve. We are going to reach the point that we have the power to do things like those Iron Man suits. How long? Figure about 10, 15 years, given our current rate of advancement. See, with some things, we have a semi-steady rate of advancement. Now, these, I'm not going to say that these are huge technological jumps, but take, for instance, the concept of Moore's Law. Moore's Law, by the way, just to explain, Moore's Law is not a law. The idea behind Moore's Law is that the amount of transistors in a given IC chip will double every 18 months. Originally it was 24, and then it became 18. And what that means, number of transistors on a chip, usually actually results in smaller die sizes because they're having to print them smaller and smaller. And to understand how small, I don't even really have a good scale for it at the moment. I wish I did. Sorry, checking messages again. People are talking to me. Anyways, to explain how this continues, so they double every 18 months, and it's kind of stayed that way. Moore's Law is not an absolute. They expect, in fact, every once in a while you'll see an article saying that we've hit the end of Moore's Law, that no longer can chip sizes continue to decrease, the number of transistors continue to increase on them at the same rate, and every time they get proved wrong. Hard drive densities continue to increase at a certain rate. There's theories that some of that is actually artificially done. Right now, I've got a 1 terabyte drive in my machine. Well, Western Seagate just got through releasing their 8 terabyte drives, and Western Digital is releasing their 10 terabyte drives, 10 times the size. This machine is a 2011 machine. That's 4 years. Holy smokes. 10 times the amount of space in it. Star Trek, could throw back to that, actually ended up being smart and using a non-existing term to describe how much storage was on their little chips that they had, isolinear chips, because somebody got smart and realized there was no way to say how fast this was going to continue to go. So for once, they tried to do something that was truly fictional and go outside of our measurement system so that we couldn't just have an analog to what it was. Plus it ended up being a great plot point because they could say that all of the existence of a holodeck was on one isolinear chip. In reality, we may get to that point, especially with the concepts of quantum storage and things like that in the future. But the point, going back to the main point, all these things have happened in such a short period of time. Science fiction has a great challenge before it. To stay relevant, somebody who writes a science fiction novel right now, in 5 to 10 years, the ideas they come up with will probably already be obsoleted. Now, that's not every person, and some people write around it. Stephen Baxter, who wrote a series of books I really enjoyed, called Manifold. Manifold Space, Manifold Time, Manifold Evolution, I think it was. That talked to bigger concepts and levels and concepts that were what would happen if society continued to exist for, say, 65,000 years, or until literally the heat death of the universe had begun, until these big thoughts. Those hard sci-fi guys, they do a pretty good job. But the general sci-fi that you pick up in the bookstore or off of Amazon or what have you, they don't think that far forward. As a matter of fact, I started a book called First Footsteps, science fiction, space travel, set only, I believe I set it 30 some odd years in the future. We're building the first warp drive-based systems, and little bits of technology that I came up with for it between then, when I started 2 years, and now. Some of it's already started to happen. And it's like, well, how the hell am I supposed to write sci-fi if you guys keep inventing stuff faster than science fiction writers can think ahead of it? And that's part of the problem. That's the challenge that they're going to have from now on. The longer this happens, the faster, the more accelerating. And don't get me wrong, I'm not bitching. I'm excited. Us as a species, we're doing so much so quickly, and some people will debate that that's not necessarily a good thing, but we're doing so much so quickly that we're actually taking the realms of fiction that we're thinking are hundreds of years away, and we're compressing time to the maybe 20, 30 years at times. So small amount of time to get to those big milestones. In fact, the kicker is these big milestones, they're not really even that big to us anymore. The idea of everybody can be connected anywhere, it's old hat. I mean, we accept it as part of everyday life. The idea of a machine in front of us that has access to the entire archive of knowledge of the human race was a big deal at one time. Wow, what a concept. It's every day. We look at cat videos every day. So, what does that do to science fiction? I'm not saying it's an end to science fiction, or that science fiction is bad, or anything like that. I'm putting out a challenge. I'm putting out a challenge to think further. Electronic Arts, by the way, used to use that as use a similar line as their company logo way back when, before they were Electronic Arts, the juggernaut we think of them today. It said, "We see further." And that's why I'm saying science fiction people are going to need to start doing. See a lot further into the distance. Don't look 20 years down the road and say it's going to be something for 300 years from now. Don't look at your cell phone and think, well, no, maybe they could be on my wrist. Nah, that's just miniaturization. That's simple stuff. Well, maybe it could be, I don't know. On my temple, I do this and talk. No. See, that's still just miniaturization. We're not doing anything special yet. Maybe it's just a thought, and I call somebody head-to-head from, maybe it's an implant, or maybe it's something that I carry with me. Now you're thinking, how would that affect society? Not how does miniaturizing their device affect society? And even some of the biggest and best science fiction writers have kind of ran into this problem. Snow Crash, great book. one of the premises in the book was the idea of virtual reality um, being such a nearly perfect kind of setup that you could step into mentally. We're almost there. I've been inside, not kidding, I've been inside somebody's prototype holodeck setup produced here in Kansas. Not physical form stuff, but the way the system is set up so that you are part of the experience as you're walking around inside of it. Amazing. Definitely a suspension of disbelief type setup, especially because I'm sitting there and playing something that put on Mech Warrior on it. Neat. Yeah, I had a point. It was gone. I'm sorry. I was going somewhere with that. Yeah, I hate it when that happens. See further. I mean, see where does this stuff affect us? Go a little bit beyond it. Oh, Neil Stevenson, Snow Crash. Snow Crash had the idea that people be carrying cameras around, and citizens may actually start doing things like videoing events where people are breaking the law. Guess what? That was fairly far-flung setup, but it's already happening right now. Go on YouTube someday. Actually, you can also see when the good guys are messing up. When the cops, the ones that are not good cops, when they mess up and they start beating somebody, guess what? It ends up on YouTube now, or live feeds, or any of these different places. The ubiquitousness of this is so there. Or, for instance, look at Russian cam videos. In Russia, it is very, very common to have a cam on your car. It's actually because of insurance reasons and things like that. It makes perfect sense if you're in Russia. In the United States, we don't think that way. I've got to quit doing that. It always distracts me when I do it. I do this little maneuver, and anyways, that's what ADHD does for you. Anyways, so look further. Go further. Go as far out as you can. Don't stick around here where it's safe. Stuff like I said, stuff like how can you improve the cell phone so it's just on your wrist? Man, that's just playing in shallow water. Go out there. There's a whole big ocean of future out there. Don't stick close to the shore. Go as far out as your imagination can take you. Do the amazing. Think about what happens when we become a transhuman society. If you're wondering what's the term transhuman, okay, well, you might not be as familiar with sci-fi as you should be. Transhuman being beyond the era where we're just human beings. Post-humanity, for instance, where either we become transferred intelligences or any of these number of things. Then find the common point of commonality between our current existing society and those amazing generations and generations out societies. Write those. Don't focus on the neat little tech widgets. Who cares if it's a bullet that can go around corners? That's neat. By the way, we almost have that. That concept's only about 20 some odd years old. Any of these things that you can think of, when you think of them, stop and look at the world and go, wait, how long did it take us to get here? How long will it take us to get excuse me, take us to get to the next spot like that? Taking the concept of the flexible bullet, how long from this point we are now did it take us to get to where we are for weapons technology? Things like, oh shoot, can't remember the name of the thing. Can shoot a million rounds a minute. Yep, it's gone. Man, I tell you what, I hate ADHD some days. ADHD and an old man's memory. I'm not that old. But anyways, go further, go run. Run away from these local concepts and get out there. Look at Stephen Baxter and these guys who didn't bother to think about the local concepts, the stuff that's only a couple years out, or a couple 10 or 20 years out, and just say that they're hundreds of years in the future. No. This guy went with the idea, well, let's see, the universe is going to end because all matter is going to end up being too far apart. So what does society do about it? It starts moving stars. from the past, or from the future into the past, thus changing the variables in the universe's expansion. That's a big concept. That's where science fiction needs to start playing with, I think. Stephen Baxter, I think, is a great example of somebody who can think way the hell out there. And I'd love to see more authors who are, and this is important, who are good authors who have an understanding of humanity, but also the technical understanding to go out there. That's what I want to do more of. But that's just me. And this is just my little rant on where science fiction is at, and where science fiction could be. But despite the rant, never devalue what science fiction has helped us achieve. As science fiction has helped us achieve these neat short-term goals. What kid did not look at the Star Trek communicator and think, I have to have one? And can you imagine how happy they were when they started designing the Motorola StarTAC flip phone? So, anyways, jeez. Anyways, I'm out of here. I'll see you all tomorrow night when I rant about something else. Anyways, bye. Oh yeah, I probably should do that thing. Hey, if you enjoyed this, you should click subscribe on my channel and hit like on this video, and please leave comments. You know what? If you like what I said, yeah, sure, hit subscribe. I'm not trying for the biggest subscriber thing. I don't make like tons of money off this. In fact, factored out, this is worth about $3 to me. So it's not exactly raking in the dough. This is what I do for fun, though. It just has to be I do get a small sideline of funds from it. And if you're curious how, go to Fiverr. Actually, just look on YouTube on my description there. It's got a couple of links to Fiverr gigs that I do that net me a little bit of income from this. A really little bit, but it's something. Anyways, see y'all later. Have fun. And if you're in Kansas, enjoy the rain. This is fantastic. I almost wish we could get a real storm going, but a little rain is just good enough. Anyways, good night. And good night.